make it relevant, tell the story. That's kind of what you need. Welcome back to another episode of Data with Peachey. It is episode number 6. And today's episode, I've really bounced around with a couple ideas. So first of all, thank you all for watching and making comments and doing the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, because I'm getting some people to say like, hey, I've been listening to your podcast. I really, really like this. So I'm going to keep going with this thing because I really think it's starting to make a difference. And, you know, for the few of you that have come up to me and talked to me, thank you very much. I really, truly appreciate it. But in today's episode, I want to talk about, does your business speak data? This is all about data literacy. And now I can already hear people in the comments, or maybe you're not going to make a comment, and I can hear you on LinkedIn talk about how you don't want to use the term literacy because it kind of makes you seem like you're data illiterate, and that's not what I mean. So I don't want that negative connotation to be associated with it. What I'm talking about is data literacy at its core, the ability to understand, interpret, communicate with data effectively. Are we doing everything that we can as data governance professionals to put our business folks in the right frame of mind for that? In today's episode, we're going to talk about what it is, why it's important, some of the things that you can do, and the ever important, what happens when you have that executive that just flat out refuses, that I'm not going to learn it? What are the keys and tips and tricks that I can give you that can finally sway that executive that is just not quite grasping what it means to data for the business? Let's talk about what data literacy is. I'm just going to kind of read off the script here. According to Gemini, which is the Google AI, data literacy refers to the ability to understand, interpret, communicate with data, encompasses a wide range of skills, competencies, including the ability to read, interpret data visualizations, analyze and evaluate data, draw meaningful insights, and communicate findings to others. We're going to take even a step back further from there, and we're going to talk about, are we giving our business partners the right terms and how they should be talking about data? Think about it: metadata, master data, data quality business rules in plain English. The ability to, when they interpret those results, do they know what those results mean? Did we give them the definitions of maybe those critical data elements, give them the definitions of those metrics so they're communicating and understanding what they're communicating to those around them? Now, some key components of data literacy, again, right off the bat, we've got to be able to give our business partners and our tech partners as well the ability to understand data sources and data types. So talking about where data comes from, how it's collected, the different formats, numbers, text, images. We've got to be able to provide them with kind of that playbook or that book that they can go out and say, I understand what it means to go get this data from this source. None of this stuff that I'm talking about right now is outside the scope of data governance. It is right in the wheelhouse of core traditional data governance. The next piece is, analyzing data. Did we give them the basics when in terms of calculations? What does a calculation mean? Where does that data come to and from? Again, the literacy part is giving them everything that they need in order to be successful when they start to do the analysis and do the interpretation of that data. Do they know what it means? Do they know where it's coming from? Giving them the techniques and the different patterns that you can use when it comes to using that data. Now, the interpretation of those results, this goes into, again, ties really well into things like data usage and saying, hey, did they put that data in the proper context, understanding what that stuff means in order for them to fulfill their business requirements? Now that we've talked about what it is, let's talk about why it's important. Right off the bat, informed decision-making. How many times have we been in situations as data governance or data professionals, data governance, data management, data anything really, have we been in a situation where we need to make an informed decision based on the data that we have in front of us, but we're not quite sure if the data that's in front of us is exactly the way that it should be? We've got to be able to make sure that they understand that when they are making a decision, they fully know what that data means. They understand where it comes to and from, how it's being used, if that's being used ethically, is it being used as it's intended? Again, we're putting all of these things in the context for them to be able to use the data in the best way possible for their informed decision-making. Data literacy helps the organization from a risk management perspective, gives the company the ability to fully understand what it means, and it helps the organization really kind of set the right context and the right risk appetite for the data in question. And it also fosters the ability for people to do critical thinking. Again, all of these things seems very self-explanatory. So cool, you're saying to yourself right now, cool, you told me the what and you told me the why. And I know these things. I'm not dumb. I fully understand what these things mean. So how do I go about doing that? Now, one thing I would say is there's two pieces that I'm going to highlight right here. And this isn't just the two that you can do. Emphasize a practical application of the data, which I think a lot of organizations really, really struggle with the practical application when they start to talk about the data. And then they also fail with the very next thing, which is role-specific training and role-specific abilities for people to understand what the data means to them. Personalize it. Emphasize the practical application of the data, but in the same vein, also make it very role-specific. Remember, we're not talking about one size fits all here. What will work with a C-suite executive is not what's going to work with somebody who may be an individual contributor who's day-to-day heads down right into the thick of it when it comes to the data. Those are not the same level of literacy programs that you need to build as part of your governance or management program. So when I talk about practical application, don't focus solely on theory. Don't focus on theory, and don't assume that the people that you're talking to know what it means when you start to say things like governance, management, data quality, metadata management. They probably know more than they think that they do, but it's important that you set the right context for your business. Now, I'm going to emphasize that one more time. Set the context from a data literacy perspective that works for your business. Not one size fits all. Data quality from one company might be different from data quality for another company. Give your business owners, give your stewards the ability to understand what it means to be data literate for that company. Center the training and the playbook and the procedures and the documents around your organization's actual faces. Use real world examples that mean something to them. But again, when you're doing that, make sure that you're targeting it specifically to them and their role. So what might be a C-suite level executive, they might, talk about how do they understand the data visualizations, what's on the data visualizations. Keep it very high level. They're at that 30,000, 50,000 foot view. But when you start to get into maybe one level down, they're still senior managers, but maybe they're like a VP. They need a little more detail. And then you get into your middle management. You get a little bit more detail there. And then you get into your individual contributors, the people that are day-to-day and that can quote unquote speak data like the way that you do. That gives them the ability. You meet your people where they are, and you actually can tailor your data literacy program to each of those things. But it's really important to understand that that's going to take work on your end from a governance or data management program to understand who are my constituents? What are they looking for? Are they looking for things like, do they need to read a spreadsheet a certain way? Do they need to understand what the data model looks like? Do they only really care about the KPI and how that thing's calculated? Maybe not so much about what went into the discovery of that. Are they just doing some hardcore data analysis? Again, it's really important to meet your constituents where they are. And that's really where you can start to see the program from a data literacy perspective really start to flourish and take off. Emphasize what it means to them for the role that they're in. That is one of the most important things. That's cool. That's great. Maybe you have some sort of executive that just flat out says, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm never going to understand it. I'm not going to meet you where you are. And you're just constantly fighting that uphill battle. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. Let's use the rule of 80-20 here. You're not going to make everybody happy, and that's okay. But remember, if you're doing this for the rest of the company, pretty soon the entire company is going to start to see that, wait a minute, I'm being trained the same way as that executive or senior leader. I don't understand why they don't get it, because they're taking the time to meet with me. And then honestly, other senior leaders might start to potentially be one of your advocates that can go to that other senior leader or go to that other executive and say, hey, this is how I'm interpreting it. So again, it's important to make sure that you're not going to please everybody. Rule of 80-20 is that you definitely want to focus in on here. Try to get to that 80, and then that 80% will become advocates for the messaging that you have because you've tailored that messaging that works for them. A couple other things that you can try when you just have those people that flat out refuse: focus on the why. They don't care about the how. They don't care about the where. They don't care about the when. Well, maybe they do, but they mostly care about the why. Make it relevant to them. We talked about that before. Use storytelling instead of like abstract thoughts about data quality and critical data. They don't care. They don't understand what that is. Make sure that you use something that everybody can anchor back to. Think about it. Pumping gas in a car, going to the grocery store, going for a run. Use some sort of scenario. Really think outside the box here. Use some sort of scenario that will resonate with them, and then show them how that works. So use a real world example using storytelling, and then bring in, show, don't talk in theory. Don't just create a crazy PowerPoint presentation. Show them exactly what it means when you use those types of storytelling and those types of scenarios, and then what it works for them. Now, that's going to be trial and error. That's going to take a little bit of time, and that's okay, because that's exactly one of the things that dovetails nicely into the very next thing that I want to say. And I'll say this loud and proud for all those in the back. Companies, you need to invest in this area because it pays dividends in the end. Companies, one of the very first things that every project, every program always tries to cut first in every single place I've ever seen: communications and change management. Two arguably of the most important things when it comes to any type of project and program. And that does not change as it relates to data governance or data management either. Make sure you're developing a roadmap and a strategy as behind your communications, your data literacy program, your change management, and everything. It is going to pay dividends. Focus on resource allocation. Hey, somebody's going to make this. We're going to teach, train, and educate everybody on how to do this. We are going to speak data, quote unquote, speak data for our company. And then measure your impact and success. If you're starting to see people utilize your data catalog more, utilize your glossary more, maybe you're starting to see less tickets come in or less emails come in, really think outside the box about how you want to measure success of your program, because ultimately silence may not necessarily be a bad thing. Silence may be like, oh, nope, I completely understand. Like when you start to look and see some of those KPIs that you have out there about how successful you have of a program, it means the data literacy is finally sticking when you're starting to make these things. That's data literacy in a nutshell. Of course, it's way bigger than what I made it seem out to be, of course. But the idea is invest in the right area, really focus on developing a good, robust data literacy program. I would argue that it belongs in a data office, a data governance office specifically, because they're going to be the ones that set the policy, the standards, the procedures. Data governance professionals, if you are listening to this, one thing I would say is we are always in the nuts and the bolts as it relates to data governance policy, standards, and procedures. Let's really focus on delivering that message to our business partners and our constituents to say, this is what this means to you, using those real world scenarios and things like that that I highlighted. Definitely take the time to do it. It is not a waste of time. You will get advocates in the business. You will get advocates in technology. And those are the people that's going to help you drive forward, basically becoming a data-driven organization. So that's it. That's all I have. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting app, consider please giving it a 5-star thumbs up review, whatever they call it, on Apple, and leave a comment that you really enjoy it. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, do all those YouTube things. And I will see you in episode number 7, of which I have no idea what it's called yet. This is Data with Peachey. Thanks for watching.